Hey, Steph Paige here with SMP TV and Truth for Thursdays, and I hope that this finds you doing well on this beautiful spring Thursday. We just celebrated Easter, right? Last Sunday we celebrated Easter, which if you watched last week, you know that my grandmother fondly calls Easter Resurrection Day. And, I love thinking about the resurrection. I love thinking about the fact that Jesus is alive, and he is not only alive, but he lives in me. Because I've given my life to him, because I let him fill me up and empower me, and that I'm not living on my own strength or my own power, but I'm living by the power of the risen Lord. On the first Truth for Thursday, I talked about that we have the power of his resurrection, that we have that same spirit living within us, and that's where we get our power to live and to work and to act and everything. And I love just thinking about the fact that he's alive, and it's spring and everything's coming to life, and what all of that means. This year there's been a phrase when reading about the resurrection that just keeps going over and over and over in my head. I just want to read it to you. We'll start at Matthew 28, starting at verse 5. It says, "The angel said to the women, 'Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay.'" And I don't know about you, but at my church on Easter, you walk in and people are like, "He is risen." And then you go, "He is risen indeed." And I always want to add, just as he said, do you get that part? Do you hear that? He is risen indeed, just as he said. Have you had God tell you something, or have you read a promise in his word and you're like, I don't see how that's going to come to pass in my life. I don't see how he's going to fulfill that promise. People tell me that God is faithful. They tell me that he keeps his promises, but I don't see how these promises are going to be fulfilled in my life. Can I really trust God? Does he really do what he say he's going to do? And I think that the disciples probably struggled with that. I really do, because they didn't understand what was going on. Jesus told them that he was going to die and be raised. He told them all about that, but they didn't get it. It didn't click with them. They didn't see what was going on. They didn't see the big picture. They didn't see from Jesus' perspective what was happening from God's perspective. And they didn't understand and hear the angels telling the women, he is not here. He is risen, just as he said. And all of a sudden, in retrospect, in hindsight, it all made sense. He was doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He was alive. He had saved the world. He had done something bigger than they could have even imagined when they said, "Hosanna, save us." He was saving them in the way that it was most important, which was their heart, not necessarily their physical situation, but their spiritual situation. And you know what? He does that for us today. And he keeps his promises. I know a lot of people talk about Romans 8:28, which says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And you're like, well, actually no, because not everything in my life has been good and hunky-dory, and I love God. Am I doing something wrong? And I think that doesn't mean that he works all situations to perfection, that your life is as perfect as it could be, because that's not life, right? Life is not perfect. Things go wrong. And, my teaching leader just today in Bible study, she said something to the effect of that God doesn't remove the obstacles in our lives, because then we would be so shallow. He teaches us through the obstacles. And once again, it's not our physical circumstances that he's wanting to change. It's our spiritual circumstance he's wanting to change. He wants to insert his character into our lives so we become like him, so we know him more. And sometimes, or so often, we focus on the outward, and we don't see how he's working in our lives because we don't have the right perspective, and we don't have the whole picture, and we don't see how he's using our obstacles and our situations for good in our lives. And you know what we have to do? We have to know that he's going to do what he said he's going to do, just like he rose from the dead, just as he said. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Just as he said, whatever he's promised in your life, whatever promises you've read in his word, you can claim them. You can know that they're true because he said they're true, and he does what he says. We'll see you next time.